Hello, lovely people. I'm Lil, and this is Haunted Journey Tarot. And I'm still in January, still in that kind of no man's land of non time before I really kind of get into the new year. And I thought it would be fun to do a look back at the most surprising decks of 2025. Now, I did get quite a lot of decks last year, quite a lot of new decks, new releases. But looking back, what I found was that actually some of the ones that kind of threw me for a loop and were the most surprising weren't new decks. They might be new to me, but they weren't new releases. And actually, one of them is a deck I had in my collection for quite a few years. I'm going to have a look at that one first because it's actually a very important deck to me. Now, I first bought this about 3 years ago, and it is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. And the reason I bought it, like a lot of people probably, was because I read Maggie Stiefvater's series of books called The Raven Cycle or The Raven Boys Cycle, one of those two. And I've only read the first book so far, but I absolutely loved it. It's set in a world where there are tarot readers and magic and spirits of the land and all sorts of stuff like that. It's great. I actually need to reread it so I can finish reading the series because it's actually been ages since I read that book, and I love it. I just don't get a lot of time to read. Anyway, that's why I bought this tarot. And the other reason was because I was really, really taken with the artwork. I love this pastel style of artwork. It's a style I like to actually work in myself. Not that I get a lot of time to do art, but when I used to love using this medium. And you don't see it a lot. It's quite unusual, especially in tarot. So I absolutely loved that. The images, the artwork is, you could just fall into the artwork and get lost in them. You really can. And before I bought it, I was a little bit put off because it's a bit pippy. Now it is definitely pips with feelings. It's not just as simple as kind of pips on their own. But there's not sort of people enacting scenes, which at the time I bought it was very much what I was used to. I don't think I was really ready for a pip deck, but I so wanted it because of the book connection, because I wanted to go further into that story, and because I love the artwork. So I picked it up anyway. And I found that I just was not ready for such a pippy deck at the time. I really wasn't. And so I went back to the guidebook. However, I didn't get on with the guidebook either. I looked this up the other day and I saw somebody, I think on Reddit, saying that what were their exact words? Something like the Raven's Prophecy is the most blunt tarot ever produced. And I get that. And it definitely is blunt and to the point, I think they said, which actually suits me really well because I am quite blunt and to the point. But even for me, the guidebook was a bit too blunt and um, to the point. I'm not sure there's a better way. It's verging on rude sometimes, I think I found, or verging on a little bit, it made you feel a bit wounded, which isn't always what you want. So because of that, I didn't find I could read it without the guidebook. And I didn't enjoy reading it with the guidebook. And so I just put it on a shelf, unfortunately, and it sat there for quite a long time. And it was only this year that I picked it up again, and partly because I actually got the rest of the books to read, and unfortunately I still haven't got around to reading them. But that aside, I had intended to get back into the universe, and I thought I'd give it another go, especially because I have a little bit more experience now, and I thought, well, perhaps I can cope with a pip deck at this point. And I found I had the same problem. So I decided to take a different tack and just did away with the guidebook. I mean, I didn't actually do away with it. It still exists. I didn't throw it away or anything, but I decided to leave that firmly on the shelf. I was determined not to look at it. And because the pips weren't working for me, I decided to come at it from a different tack of just forgetting what I already knew about the RWS system and just going by what I saw in the pictures and trying to use it a lot more intuitively. And the way I did that and worked it into my practice was I used it as a nighttime deck and basically just use it as an end of the day, one card pull, although I often got lots of times 3 or 4 came out, sometimes even more than that. It got very chatty. And just to ask, what's my takeaway from the day? because I thought, well, I've already had the day. Whatever comes out, I can sort of measure my intuitive hits against what I know happened. And that worked really well as a way of kind of bonding intuitively with this deck. And as soon as I did that, I found the cards started just speaking to me, just the pictures started speaking to me. But it doesn't really work in an RWS way, I have to say. Not for me, anyway. It might do for you, and that's completely fine. But for me, it doesn't work that way at all. I will just see something in the picture that gives me an intuitive message. So literally, if I pull 3 cards at the end of the day, I'll have just 3 messages or phrases that pop into my head from the pictures alone, and it might not be what the sort of standard RWS meaning is at all, and that's fine because that's just how this deck works for me. And we've really, really bonded over this year to the point where I now feel like this is, my one true deck, my soul deck, throw it in my coffin with me deck. I can't imagine ever being without it. It's the deck that gets me the most. I find it's got kind of a very grounded to the point of being gritty, grungy energy. And a lot of time, to be honest, I need that. There's periods in my life, well, not even my life, but just week to week, to be honest, where I'm not feeling the love and light vibes that what's the word? Not attenuate, that you connect with a lot of tarot decks. There's times when I'm put off doing tarot draws because I'm not going to be, I don't feel the high vibe energy. I feel very down to earth and gritty and grungy, and like everything's not sweetness and light. And there's a lot of ugh going on out there and in my life and in the world. And this deck just holds that. It accepts that. It sees me and the world and everything that's happening for what it is. And it doesn't try and gloss over it, and doesn't try and turn it into anything love and lighty when it isn't. And I really appreciate this. I don't feel like there's any other deck quite like it out there, which is why this is actually not my OG Raven's Prophecy deck. This is a backup deck because recently, literally, when I say recently, I mean in the last couple of days, I realized that because I carry my Raven's Prophecy deck around with me everywhere, it lives in my handbag, it follows me around everywhere I go. It's somehow got a bit of water damage. It's not loads, it's just kind of in the bottom corner, all of it's got tiny bit damp at some point, just a tiny, tiny splash. But it's enough that some of the the corners are starting to peel. And I was distraught. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I'll get a backup deck. I've been hearing other tarot practitioners talk for years about their backup decks. And I've never really felt the need for one before, but I get it now. Like, I cannot be without this deck. And it was at that point, that very day, that I realised when I looked to try and get a backup deck that Llewellyn have stopped printing this as of 2026, as of this year, and everybody has already sold out. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I was looking on eBay. They're already going for £60, and that's shipping from another country, and I don't even know whether it's legit, to be honest. It looked a bit sketchy. And so I was wondering where on earth I was going to find one. But wonder of wonders, the universe came through for me. I went on Facebook Marketplace and found somebody 30 miles away selling a second-hand copy, this copy, for £5. Honestly, I couldn't believe my luck. I was so happy. They were selling 2 other decks as well, and I just I bought them at the same time just because I wanted. I don't know. I just felt I wanted to make it worth their while because I was so happy to find them selling my soul deck for £5. So an affordable deck that was within my reach. I could travel to get it. So I ended up making a 60-mile round trip to buy a deck that 2 decks that I already had, because one of the 3 decks was also a duplicate. But that's fine because I had that and I gave it to my partner. So I have one myself again now, which worked out quite well. But I cannot tell you how relieved and happy I was to find another copy of this deck. That's how important it's become to me over the last year. Bearing in mind, it started 2025 on a shelf, gathering dust, and now I can't live without it. Just look at this Ten of Wands. This, It's just one of my favourite cards. How perfect is that? An amazing deck. Anyway, I'm not going to walk you all the way through it. I'm sure you've seen this a million times because it is an older deck. Let's move on to the next one. So the next deck is actually the reason I ended up starting this channel. So it's not, I'm showing you the big Tarot of the Owls, the full-size Tarot of the Owls today, but I'm also going to show you the mini deck that started it all. So this is the deck that surprised me, the Tarot of the Owls mini, because this is the deck I got first. I think it came out not last September, but the September before that. So it's not, again, it's not brand new. Certainly the bigger deck isn't brand new. The mini only came out more recently. And I bought the mini as like a trial because I wasn't sure if I wanted to get the full-size deck. And the mini versions are so affordable to get as a trial if you're not sure if you want to get the full size. The downside is they don't come with a guidebook. And that's one of the reasons I ended up wanting to get the bigger version, because I did want the guidebook. And, you know, as amazing as these little cards are, they can be a bit fiddly. But they're perfect for travel, and that's the point. So I'll show you some of the bigger cards because they're going to show up better on screen. The only bad thing about these little mini decks is the tuck boxes they come in, because as you can see, they get so very battered so very quickly. But never mind. So the big version, let's get these out so you can see the cards a little better. They're really vibrant, absolutely beautiful. I love the artwork. I love the way that Elizabeth Alba, the artist, just manages to get all the expressions on the owls' faces and in the owls' postures that give you the message of the RWS kind of message of each card. It's absolute genius the way she's done it, honestly. It really is. I think it's so beautiful and it reads so well. But it's a very happy, vibrant, cheerful, fun, whimsical deck. The colours are very bright. And the reason this surprised me is because I took this mini version into Rendlesham Forest with me. Now, me and my partner, we've started going to Rendlesham Forest at least once a year. It's a very magical place. It's full of high strangeness. It's full of all sorts of weird and wonderful things, ghost stories, UFOs, cryptids, you name it. There's a lot going on. And it is the most amazing place to sit and have a picnic and do some tarot readings, which is something I love to do at lots of different places, but especially at Rendlesham Forest. But because this is a handy little travel deck, I took this one because it's good for road trips. And for some reason, I was drawn to use it in Rendlesham Forest. And honestly, this doesn't feel like the right energy match for talking to whatever is in Rendlesham Forest. Like I said, cryptids, UFOs, old gods, land spirits. It's a very ancient place. We know from archaeological digs at Rendlesham that there was a whole Saxon, I was going to say kingdom, city, a whole Saxon city there. Very important place. You've got Sutton Hoo just down the road with the Sutton Hoo burial. It didn't feel like a serious enough deck. And that's just not doing it justice at all, because it turned out it was. With that little fun, cute owl mini deck, I did the most amazing reading in the middle of Rendlesham Forest about how to connect to the old gods and the land spirits there, about offerings and just all sorts of things. And it got so in depth, I actually got my dictaphone out, which I'd taken with me, to record myself talking through the reading, because it got so deep, surprisingly deep. And it was at that point I thought, do you know what? I could have done this on camera, because I'm sure there are other people who would enjoy watching this and finding out whatever is inhabiting or haunting Rendlesham Forest has to say. And unfortunately, I didn't think about that at the time. I thought about it afterwards. So I haven't been back again yet, but I will, and you'll be seeing more of that kind of content on this channel in the coming months as things warm up and places open and we start to go on road trips again. But yes, for such a cute deck, this has surprisingly incredible depth. It can hold up to some really serious readings that I didn't really expect, and that, that was my bad. I wasn't giving it enough credit. So yeah, don't write this off as a cutesy deck. There's a lot of depth going on here. So next on the list, well, first I'm going to light my candle because I've just realised I've been sitting here with it unlit. I meant to light this at the beginning of the video and I completely forgot. So let's just do that now because that would be nice. But now, next up, it's another oldie but a goodie, the Crystal Visions Tarot. I'm sure you've seen this a million times, but I only picked it up this year, and I did so for two reasons. So firstly, because I saw Wicked Moonlight, who is one of my favourite channels, do a video, and they included it in a collection of what they called Whimsigoth decks. So Whimsigoth is it's an aesthetic. It's a kind of, well, whimsical gothic, as the name would suggest, aesthetic from the 90s, and I lived through that, so I'm all here for it. It's very nostalgic to me. I loved it at the time and I still love it now. I think I mentioned that in my last video with my Whimsigoth Filofax, and I couldn't believe that this deck wasn't produced in the 90s because it so much has that vibe and aesthetic. Even the style of the artwork, it's not what I would choose normally at all. It's not my style, but it is what was around in the 90s. I think I had some, key rings and tins and stationery bits and pieces that very much was this style of artwork, very fantasy goth. It's just what was around, and so I had it like everybody else because there wasn't as much choice. We didn't have all the amazing, incredible plethora of tarot decks to choose from. I didn't have any tarot decks in the 90s. I was a late bloomer when it came to tarot. I really knew nothing about them. I think a lot of times when you saw stuff like that around in the 90s, it was the angel decks and the Doreen Virtue type things, and which isn't my bag at all. But this is the deck I wish I'd had as a teenager. And if I'd have seen this, if this actually had been around in the 90s, as I feel like it should have been, I would have gotten into tarot many, many years earlier. I really would. Because this is exactly what 13, 14-year-old me would have vibed with. And like I say, it wasn't actually produced in the 90s. It was produced in 2011 or whatever it says on the box, actually. I'll have to check, but yeah, not in the 90s anyway, and which still surprises me. So I had to pick it up just for the nostalgia value and because it's what teenage me would have wanted. So I thought, well, maybe a bit of inner child healing. I didn't expect to really bond with it, to be honest. I don't particularly like the borders. It's not really my style of artwork at all. And the other reason I picked it up was because it was on sale for £11, and I just thought, I can't not get it for £11. That is an absolute bargain. I kind of want it in my collection for the nostalgia. But then I started using it, and I know I'm not the first person to say this. I've listened to a lot of people say exactly the same thing. So this is a bit of I've just experienced what everybody else has, really. I can only back that up. I wasn't expecting much from it, and then I started using it, and it is such an intuitive deck. It just blew my mind. I'm not sure what it is about it particularly. I think a lot of it is to do with the use of colour, very clever use of colour and symbolism. But there's something about the way the artwork is produced that just gives those intuitive hits. It really does. I found that I could read with it pretty much straight away. I mean, I did have a little bit of a kind of, it's not quite a ritual, but basically I found out that this deck was inspired. The artist was inspired when they were making it by the Stevie Nicks album Crystal Visions, which is why it's called the Crystal Visions Tarot. And that's not a Stevie Nicks album I'd ever listened to, but I did when I picked up this deck. As I was doing my first flip through, my first shuffle, as I was doing my bonding with it, I put that album on in the background and played it all the way through, and just kind of let the cards soak up that vibe as they were presumably intended to do. And so that was my bonding with it. which was very cool. More of that, please. I absolutely love kind of deck and album connections, and I'm going to be doing some more of my own of those in the future. But yeah, this is just an incredibly intuitive deck. I don't know how else to describe it. I really don't. Um, there's something about it. I could read with it straight away. The messages were loud and clear. It does have the RWS. I wouldn't call it an RWS clone. So if you're brand new to tarot, it might be a little bit tricky, especially because there's only like a little white book. There's not a big guidebook or anything. But there's layers, there's depth behind and beneath and below and beyond the RWS symbolism that you don't even really pick out when you're looking at the cards, but they just hit something deep inside that makes it really, that it just makes it speak to you. And that's exactly what I found. So this has just been such a surprise. It was such a bargain. I do reckon, even if you don't think the artwork is for you, I would say it is worth a go. If you find it again for £11, pick it up. I mean, the box is a bit naff, unfortunately. I really hate tuck boxes. It's only got a little white book, but to be honest, the little white book is fine. It's actually it's okay. It's helpful. It's probably enough. But I find I don't need it. I don't need a guidebook at all when I'm working with this deck. It just hits. It just gives me messages, and I love it for that. And that was a real surprise this year. Fourth on the list is an actually new deck that was actually new out this year. Well, kind of. The Mindscapes Tarot by John A. Rice. I believe this was originally a Kickstarter of just the major arcana, and then it got picked up as a mass market deck by, I want to say, I can't remember who the publisher is. Does it not say on here anywhere? Hay House. Yeah, Hay House. And he did all the minors. And it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. I knew I wanted this deck from the moment I saw it. I love everything about it. It's just beautiful. It's a landscapes deck, which is perfect because I don't particularly love peoply decks. I'm not really into them that much. And I take my tarot on a lot of road trips, and I read a lot of places and landscapes. So how much more perfect can you get than a landscape deck to read landscapes? And that's what I intended to do with it, to take it to places to read the energy of the place. And I have done that. I did that on one occasion. I didn't get it early enough to take it on most of the road trips I did last year. So I haven't had as much practice with it in that regard as I wanted. So I can't really comment on how good it is for that. I only had one go with it, although it was good in that instance. But I didn't want to just leave it sitting on the shelf, sort of outside of road trip season. So what I did with it instead was I wanted to make sure I really bonded with it in time to go on next year's road trips. So I kept it by the bed, and I decided to use it as what I call my sunrise deck. Now, that is a vibe more than a practicality, and it's because, I mean, look in the front in the box. It's got such a early morning breath of fresh air energy to it. There's something about it that just feels like that first thing in the morning quietness and stillness and freshness. And but calling it my sunrise deck is a bit optimistic. I'm never up at sunrise. I'm not a morning person. I can't remember the last time I saw a sunrise, and if I did, I probably looked at it and went back to sleep again. But I do use it first thing in the morning. I've been using it as my first draw of the day before I even get out of bed, and it's been really surprisingly insightful. And it perhaps shouldn't surprise me. It's just that I didn't really intend to use this deck for me. I didn't intend to use it for personal readings. I intended to take it out and read the energy of place. So to have such deep, insightful personal readings from this deck was a surprise. And part of that is because of the guidebook. The guidebook is phenomenal. It's got so much more in than I thought it would have. And when I say that, I mean, it's only a little book, it's kind of the same size you'd normally expect. But my goodness, John A. Rice has packed in so much into this book. It's so well thought out. It is not a phoned in guidebook at all. I mean, people talk a lot about the artwork, and I don't hear them talking as much about the guidebook. And I think that's, you're kind of missing out almost the best bit. I mean, as stunning as the artwork is, and as much as I love it, he's really put so much effort into this book. There's so much psychology in here, and all of the cards. I think I'm not sure the mages do now. Oh no, they do. Yeah. So all the cards come with like something extra. You've got the keywords. He breaks down all the symbolism, even down to the colours used in the card, which is incredible. And then sets the scene, tells you what the scene is saying, is expressing. And then we have an action. So for the major arcana, we have an action, something to do, to act upon the message from this card. So you're not just reading a card and putting it back in the deck and going, well, that was interesting. It gives you a takeaway. It gives you, okay, well, this is the energy. This is what the message is that is coming through. So here's something you can do about that, which is amazing. The minor arcanas have different things. Some of them have actions. Some of them have affirmations, which is also an action, but it's just a different kind of action. Some of them have journaling prompts like these. There's just so much in here, and there's such a lot of good psychology in here. It's just, he's put such a lot of effort into that guidebook that if you're not reading it, I do feel like you're missing out. I love a good deck where you don't have to go into the guidebook. That's kind of my preference, really, because I find that personally, if I have to look at the guidebook, I end up getting quite bogged down in what the book says it should mean and not how it applies to me on my own personal take on it, which it can, I can think it can detract from a reading if you can't get some intuitive hits off it. No, if you're learning, I mean, like I'm still learning, so there's no shame in using a guidebook whatsoever. But I don't like to have to all the time, because I get some of my most intuitive, accurate, deep, meaningful readings have come from not using a guidebook at all. However, this is a bit of an exception to the rule. I think this is one where it's absolutely worth reading the guidebook. I've left this out because there's some extra cards in here. So you actually get 2 extra cards. There's the great work in the catacombs. I think it's just 2 extra. So the 2 extra sort of major arcana cards. But yeah, the guidebook is phenomenal. Cards are phenomenal. I was really surprised at how good of a personal reader this is even. And mainly that's a me thing. It's because that's not how I was intending to use it. But I haven't heard people big up the guidebook as much as I feel it should be. So I kind of wanted to do that. This is phenomenal. Thank you, John A. Rice. Okay, next up, and I'm going to have to speed up because we are losing the light and it's getting very shadowy. But the next surprise, again, not a new one, oldie but a goodie, and it's the Celtic Lenormand. And it was a surprise because I had no intention whatsoever of learning Lenormand last year. I can barely learn tarot. I wouldn't say I have learned tarot. I mean, for most people, that's an ongoing journey, an ongoing process, isn't it? But I'd barely got my head around tarot, let alone wanting to start learning a new system. And the reason I bought this is because the artwork is by Will Worthington. I'm an absolute huge Will Worthington fan. Basically, if Will Worthington draws anything, I will be buying it if I possibly can. And this is no exception. I didn't even know this existed because I've not looked into Lenormand at all. The guidebook for this, by the way, is exceptional. It's fantastic. It's really, really helpful. So if you don't know anything about Lenormand, you'll be fine because the guidebook takes you through all the meanings so well. There's different sort of slants on each of the meanings. There's all the Celtic associations. It's a really, really lovely guidebook. But yeah, I wasn't intending to learn Normand, and I only bought it because I suddenly realised it existed, and I was like, oh my goodness, Will Worthington, I absolutely need to have that in my life. And so I bought it, and then I was just so taken by the artwork. I also love the size of the cards. I love smaller cards because my hands are small and a bit cranky and rubbish from a chronic illness. So I can find big decks really difficult to handle, and these are just such a lovely size. They're perfect. And the box fits in your handbag. It travels well. It's great. And I have taken this to some locations, one of which I did a reading with it at, and it was phenomenal. So I will do that on camera. I will go back there and do one on camera sometime in the summer. But yeah, so well, I didn't have to, but I chose to start learning Lenormand this year. And I basically did that through Lisa Papez. Her YouTube channel, she did a series on Let's Learn Lenormand Together, and that's what I used. And it is a phenomenal series. Absolutely 100% recommend that. I found it really helped things click for me. I do need to go back through some of my notes because I haven't picked this up since the summer, and I've forgotten not the meanings. I think that the Let's Learn Lenormand Together that Lisa Pez did, that really ingrained the meanings in my brain marvelously, which is quite something because I'm getting old now and I find it more difficult to learn new things and actually remember them. And I did. The meanings just sat really well with me. I found it quite easy, which surprised me. But what I don't remember so much of is with Lenormand, the way the way you lay out the cards and read the spread is very important as well. So I need to go back and refresh myself on that through my notes, and I will do. But yes, this was a surprise because I didn't know anything about Lenormand at the start of the year. I didn't intend to learn to read Lenormand, but I did, and I was absolutely blown away by this deck and just by Lenormand in general. I couldn't believe how much I loved it and how natural I found it. And yeah, I can't wait to work with this deck more in the summer. And last but not least, and the only reason it's last is because it is the last deck I bought in the year out of this collection, and it's the Murder of Crows Tarot. So again, it's not a new one, but it is new to me. And I got the mini, so I'll hold it up because otherwise it would be a bit difficult to see. The reason I got the mini was again because I wasn't sure that I wanted to invest in the full size version. And this, I mean, the full size version is about 30 quid, which isn't, it's not unreasonable, but I picked up this mini deck for about £12. So that is a lot more affordable if you're not sure that you're going to get on with it as a deck. And I really wasn't. So I first looked at this deck ages ago because crows have a very important place in my spiritual practice. And so, of course, I heard of a crow deck and I thought, well, fantastic, how perfect to have a crow tarot deck. But then I looked at the artwork and I thought, I will never get on with this. I don't think I can read this. It's kind of sort of RWS, but it can be difficult to see that in the cards a lot of the time. It's very surreal. It's quite nightmarish. It's, some of the cards I'm just not sure what's going on in there. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I don't see me getting on with this deck at all. And I finally took the plunge and got the mini version because it was very affordable and because of just the time and place and headspace I was in. So I bought this around Halloween, and it was kind of coming towards the end of Halloween and moving from a place of watching Halloweeny videos into watching ghost stories for Christmas videos. So I was basically watching a lot of M.R. James old ghost stories for Christmas adaptations, and it was very much horror in the landscape and this kind of cold bleakness and the surreal kind of nightmarish vibe. And this deck just reflected that perfectly. It was very much a right place, right time thing. And whereas I thought I would never be able to read with it, when it came, and like I said, I was very much still in that folk horror, bleak landscape, wintry energy. This fitted in perfectly, and I was really surprised. I could read with it straight away, and I could read with it fine, which was just such a shock to me. I never thought I'd get on with it in a million years. I don't think it's one I will want to use it in the summer. I think it's very much a seasonal deck, as a lot of my decks are, to be honest. That is quite naturally how I work anyway. I do have most of my decks have a seasonal feel to them as far as I'm concerned. And this is very much, this is a bleak winter months, autumn winter months deck. Kind of starting at Halloween. It's a very November-y deck. It's a it's such an M.R. James vibe deck to me personally. I'm sure it's not to everybody. And part of that is just because I was reading M.R. James at the time that I bought it, but I literally call it my M.R. James deck, and that's how I think of it, that kind of horror in the landscape vibe. But yeah, I was really surprised. It read for me straight away. I bonded with it in a way I never thought I would. So I may end up getting the full size deck at some point in the future. But to be honest, these mini decks, these Low Scarabeo mini decks, they're fantastic. If you've got smaller hands, they shuffle so well. They're so easy to handle. And unlike the Llewellyn mini decks, where they come in a really, really flimsy little tuck box, these have good, sturdy boxes. These travel around fine. These will keep your deck safe, even if you're carrying it around with in your handbag, taking it on location with you, which I probably will do with this deck. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to using this deck more. I think I'm kind of in January now, just starting to come out of the season in which I want to use this. But I do have a deck, an Oracle deck that's arrived recently, and I'm going to do an unboxing another day that I think this will pair with beautifully. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And that, lovely people, is my collection of decks that surprised me in 2025. I would love to hear if you have had any decks that surprised you in 2025. Again, they do not have to be new. They just have had to have bought something new and surprising and wonderful to your 2025 that you weren't expecting, as we kind of segue out of the old year and slowly make our way, slightly grudgingly, into 2026. Yes, so let me know down below. What are your thoughts? And I hope you'll join me for another video very soon. Bye, everybody.